Hello and welcome to today's Bitrix24 webinar HR Toolkit. Thank you for joining today. Okay, so we'll just go through some introductions. So my name's Sam Connor. I'm part of the sales engineer team here at Intreface. We're based in the UK, the US and Hong Kong. We offer a full range of services to help you with Bitrix24. So starting off with pre-sale support, so we can discuss your requirements in detail, see if Bitrix24 could be a good fit for what you're trying to achieve. And if it is a good solution, we can then implement Bitrix24 for you so we can set up the system for your requirements. If you're looking at the self-hosted edition, we can provide our hosting services, and then we then provide bespoke training and ongoing support to essentially help you get the most value out of your Bitrix24 system. Okay, so if you are new to Bitrix24, you're joining today's webinar to get a bit more information in general about Bitrix, just to explain a little more about the system. Essentially, Bitrix24 is a collaboration suite of well in excess now of 40 different tools that you can use to help you to manage your business. And there are over 12 million customers now around the world that use the Bitrix system. And it's available in two different editions. Okay, so we have the Bitrix24 Cloud, and then we also have the Bitrix24 self-hosted solution. Then prices starting from $49 a month for a cloud-based system, and if you're looking at the self-hosted or the on-premise edition, essentially, that will cost you starting from $2,990 for the Business 50 edition. In year 2, and then ongoing annually, you need to pay the renewal fee, which is approximately 25% of the license fee for the system. Okay, so today's webinar is HR Toolkit. So we're going to be looking at the HR modules within the Bitrix24 system. And before we go into those in detail, let's just take a look at why you should use Bitrix24 for your HR requirements. So it has a huge number of tools essentially within the system for your HR purposes. And it starts off with having tools for finding your employees very easily inside the system. So if you've got offices around the world, you can use the Bitrix system to really collaborate and bring different departments and organization structures into your system. So we'll see how we can find and use our employee tools to communicate with each other in the system. There's also tools for managing your work time, so we can clock in and clock out, analyze the time that we're spending inside the system. But then you also have your own personal areas as well. So you can store documents, if it's contracts or appraisals, as an example, and we can then set permissions on those documents. And then you also can integrate your own calendar as well and use the document features for documents inside the system. So there are many different areas for HR inside Bitrix24. So once we've looked at those tools, we'll then move on to look at some of the self-service forms. So this is where we can manage absence requests, or it could be expenses. Essentially starting off a HR workflow using a self-service form inside the system. And then we can also take a look at some of the custom processes, such as onboarding new starters. So we'll see how we can essentially build any type of workflow into your Bitrix24 system for catering to your HR requirements. Okay, so let's now go into our Bitrix24 system. Let's now take a look at some of those features. Now, as I have mentioned already, there isn't really just one module for HR inside Bitrix. There's lots of different areas where you will be able to use the HR tools for your specific HR requirements. So first of all, let's just go in our Bitrix system, and the features here that I'm going to look at, they are on both the cloud and the on-premise system. We will mention if there's any functionality where you need to have a minimum tier of license. So let's go into our, first of all, profile here. Okay, so every single user on the Bitrix24 system has their own profile page. So in here, you can add your image of yourself. And then on the right-hand side, we can see all of the information about the user inside the system. So you can add all of your details here, and you can even create custom fields. So if you wanted to store specific information inside here, you have the ability to do so. A bit like what we've done here, maybe we could tag what skills we are associated to inside the organization. So here we can see Max has the payroll, hiring, and sales skills. So if you want to store additional context inside your profile, you're able to do so. And then within the profile page, we also have some additional information like so. And what's quite useful with the profile page, you've got shortcuts to the different areas of your Bitrix24 system. So here, for example, we could click into all of our tasks that we have on at the moment. So I can see all of the tasks that are currently being worked on in the system. Or maybe I want to go into my drive area. So I could click on the drive space as well and store all of my information about my documents inside here as well. So there's lots of nice shortcuts within your profile page that you can use to shortcut into lots of areas of your Bitrix24 system. Okay, so that's a look there at the profile page. Now, as I say, each user is able to store their information on their profile, but then that can now feed into your global panel for the company structure. So let's go into the employees module. And here we can see now the company structure. So every single user on the Bitrix system, they will have their own profile page, and then they will also be able to be assigned inside the company structure. And the way the company structure works is we can add all of the different departments that you are associated to within the organization. So here we can see we've got some departments for sales, for project management, marketing, and the accounts finance team. So you can essentially mirror your organization's structure into the company structure here. And you can also add sub-departments as well. And then you can add your teams and staff into their relevant departments. And we did have a question earlier on about this as to whether a user can be added to multiple departments. And yes, absolutely, you can do. So, for example, you may have somebody who's in the marketing team, but alongside that, they may also have a key role within the sales team, because sales and marketing can be very closely linked. So you can add users into multiple departments here. And this is very important to get your company structure set up correctly at the start. And this is when we implement Bitrix into businesses, this is somewhere we will most commonly start with, because the company structure, it's then associated to lots of different areas of your Bitrix24 system. So for example, inside the CRM system, we can use this company structure with the departments to set permissions as to what a user is able to access inside the CRM system. So we may say, for example, only people within the Sales UK team can access specific leads. So maybe if Jane White is the responsible person for a group of leads, then we may say, for example, only the people within her department are able to view that lead inside the CRM system. So very important to get the company structure set up correctly. And we'll see later on when we look at employee engagement, we can use this department structure here to post out messages to maybe specific departments, for example. So it's really important you get this set up accurately for how you want to set permissions and also how you want to communicate through your Bitrix24 system. So that's something to bear in mind, and that's something we can help with as a Bitrix24 partner. We're very accustomed to building out the company structure. Okay, so that's a look there at the profile and company structure. And if there is any questions about that, please do add them into the question box and we can discuss those during the intervals of today's webinar. But moving on then from looking at the company structure here. And now we can take a look at some of the time management and reporting tools. So some of the abilities of the system here, if you want to, you could turn on the time management tool to allow staff to clock in and clock out. So here, for example, at the top of the page, we have a button here that is asking me to clock into the system. So from here, a user at the start of their working day, they could clock in to their Bitrix system. And now we can start to analyze the amount of time that they are working each working day. And that time can then be logged, and you can then analyze that. So in your HR department, you can come into your time and reports area. And if you click in the work time area here, then what we can do is we can see all the time that has been logged for each user across different departments inside the system. So if there's maybe a specific amount of time that a user has to work each week, you could analyze that through the time logs inside the Bitrix24 system. So, and I can click, what's really nice here, I can click into any of those days and it gives me the full history for that working day. So I can see when the user's logged in, I can see when they've clocked out, and then it gives me the total duration for their working day. And what you can also do is you could ask for a report. So here you might want to get some more information about what the user has done for that working day. So we can see this user was late to finish. So they've just marked that information inside the system here. So you're able to really analyze the amount of working time spent inside the system. Now, another area we can also log time is on tasks. So if we're maybe working specifically on a project, for example, then what we could do is inside every task that we are working on, I could start this time tracker, and that will now start to analyze the amount of time that we're working on tasks inside the system. So it's now going to log that time in here. Or if you wanted to manually add time onto a task, then you could timestamp this onto the task as well. So if maybe you forgot to clock your time automatically, you could manually come into here and log that time as well. Okay, so we can add that time onto a task, and now that has been added into the project here. So you can see that 5 hours has been added onto the task. And then once you've logged that time on those tasks, you can then do task reporting. So if you wanted to see maybe the breakdown of time that has been spent amongst different users, you could create charts inside the reporting wizard for the task management tool. So you can break down, you can see here who has completed more work across a certain time period, or you might want to see the total amount of time for all of the staff across different projects. Then we can also report on that inside the system as well. So here we can see across different projects how much time has been logged on those projects inside the system. So there's lots of different areas you can then report on the time that you're spending inside your Bitrix system, whether that's for your day-to-day logging of work, or if it's down to specific tasks that you are working on as well. Now, for some people, they don't want the users to be able to actually clock in and clock out. So you can also turn this feature off. It's a question we get asked quite a lot. So if you wanted to turn this feature off, all you have to do is on the working time management, just turn that off like so. And then that would not require the user to log their time on tasks inside the system. So to log time on the clocking in and out tool. Okay, so that's how we can log time. Another really useful feature is the drive area inside Bitrix. So you can use the Bitrix system as a document repository, essentially. So inside here, you can upload your files and folders, or you can connect with external document management systems here. And then you can store all of your documents inside the system. And when you've done this, you can then set access rights on your drive area. So let's say here, for example, we have an absence request document. I don't really want everyone to see this, but I do want certain people to be able to access that. So what I could do through here is I could set access rights. So I'm going to allow John Smith, who is my manager, he can have full access to this document. And I might then also say certain departments could have access to this. And this is where that company structure that we looked at earlier on starts to come into play. So that structure, it really is used across a lot of areas of the Bitrix system. So I might now say, actually, everybody who is in the accounts team who manage payroll, they need to be able to access this absence request because my pays will need to be altered. So I'm going to give the accounts team access to this document, but I'm not going to give them full access. I'm just going to give them read access because they don't need to be editing the document. They just need to have access to the information. So I'm going to give them read access to the document. So it's a really, really useful tool to have on your Bitrix system. You can really set granular permissions as to who is able to access your documents inside the system. And then you've also got revision history as well. So if you do give access for a user to be able to edit information, you could actually see the revision history here as well. So you can see who's modified it, when the modification took place, and you can also restore back to a previous version as well. So let's say if that revision really wasn't needed, you could restore back to another edition. So there's a lot of really useful functionality within the Drive module that you could access. And then we also have the company drive as well. So the company drive, very similar, but essentially it's the company repository. So inside here, you could store folders for each department. And then within here, the files associated to that department, again, we'd recommend setting permissions. So we'd say only certain departments are able to access those documents inside the system. Now we're going to be looking at business processes later on. Now, what we can do on documents is run business processes. So all you have to do here is we can see different business processes we have set up. So it could be, for example, when the document comes in, you might want to set an approval process before other people are able to access it. So here you could set up that approval inside the system. And you just need to make sure that you have, before you could run those business processes, all you need to do is on here, is configure business processes, and you need to make sure that is ticked. Okay, so if it's unticked, you wouldn't be able to run those processes. So all you need to do is click that tick box there, and you can then run business processes on your documents. Only thing to mention there is you do need to have at least a professional cloud license. So if you're on a basic or a standard cloud, you're not going to be able to run business processes. So that's something just to think about if you are interested in running processes inside the system. One other feature as well within the documents are Bitrix docs. Okay, so with this feature, you're able to actually create it and engage with other users directly on a document. Okay, so once the document has loaded, we can see here, you can now start to complete or add information to a document. And what we can do is we could have online collaboration of the documents. So if you wanted to allow other users to access the documents, you can then have complete collaboration on the document as you're inputting information. So that's a really nice, useful feature using Bitrix docs. And you can do that with a document, spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint as well. So it's a really nice feature to be able to use to have online collaboration as you're working on documents, and that's embedded directly inside the Bitrix system. Okay, so let's look at the company drive, and very similar in terms of the style here, you also have the same for calendars. So inside Bitrix, you've got your own personal calendar here, so you can see all of the different meetings and events we've got scheduled in my calendar here. You can synchronize with external calendars. So if you wanted to synchronize your calendar with your Bitrix calendar, you have the functionality here to be able to do that. And then we also have a company calendar. So similar to how we have a company drive, we also have a company calendar here in the system for company-wide meetings and events. Okay, so there's a look at some of the key HR tools, so the profile, company structure. time management and task time management. We've looked at personal drives, the drive area, documents, and calendars. But now moving on, we're going to look at employee engagement. And this is a real critical area that is valuable for many organizations, especially with people working very hybrid roles now, offices all over the world. It's really important that you're able to engage with your employees. And Bitrix has so many tools that allow you to engage with your teams across different regions of the world. The first area we're going to look at today is the feed area. Okay, so Bitrix, it's one of its key aspects where it started out as was as an intranet system. So you can see this has a very much like an intranet look on the feed area. And essentially the feed is your area for any communications, any posts, anything that you are really associated with inside your Bitrix system. That information will be sent into your feed area. So at the start of your working day, we'd highly recommend going to the feed area and seeing what the latest updates or any communications or messages that have been posted onto the system for you. So for example, myself as a user here, I can see this is a new post that has been added to my feed. So one of my team members has requested annual leave. So I can see this is something that I now need to work on. And that has been added into my feed along with other areas of the Bitrix system, but it will automatically be synced into the feed as your kind of central intranet feed page. But also within the feed, it's not just an area where things will be posted for you. From here, you could send out information to different members of the team. So let's say, for example, if the office is going to be closed on Friday, I need to get that message out to departments across the world. So let's now post the message out here. Okay, so we've added a message here. So you can add your messages into the messaging board here. You can add if you wanted to any documents, or if you wanted to record a video, if you wanted to add information to go with the message, you could attach that into here. And then I can choose who I want to post this message to. So it could be, again, this is where the company structure comes into play. So we could feed this out to certain departments. But for this type of message, I want it to go to all employees because it's to do with the whole office. So inside here now, I'm going to post this message to all of the employees, and they'll now receive that message in their feed section. Okay, so let's just go. I'm just going to show you another user. Okay, and we can see inside here now that message, because it's gone to all employees, has been added into their feed area. And with any posts that go out, a user is able to like. They can also add their own comments back. Okay, so you can add all of this information onto the post line. So instead of having endless email chains, all of that information can be very focused inside the Bitrix system. So that's how we can post out messages, or from the feed as well. If you wanted to create tasks, you can add tasks into the system here. It could be you want to set up a meeting. Okay, so let's set up a meeting on Thursday. If I wanted to add other people to attend, I can then see all of their availability like so. So I can select an appropriate time for the meeting really quickly, which is a really nice feature to have here. So let's set up that meeting as well. And that will then get added into users' calendars. Another quite nice and fun interactive way to engage with employees is the ability to set up polls and questions. So what we could also do here is we could set up a question that we could send out to the organization, or again, it could go to specific departments. So let's say if I wanted to ask everyone what they would like to do for the next company event. Okay, so we can add the message into here, and that's going to be the chat in there, and let's add that as a question as well. And now we can select different events. Okay, so there's adding the question, and then we can add the different answers that people can submit. And then that just makes it a really fun and interactive way to get input from your teams. So I could then select an answer like so, and we can then see what the overall popular answer is to that question. And other types of messages we could send as well, and popular way is to send out an engagement with your colleagues is via an appreciation. So inside here, if someone's done a really good job, what we could do is we could select that user like so, and then we could select what type of badge we want to award them. And then if I wanted to, I can then select what I want this to go to everyone in the sales team, because Mark is part of the sales team. He's had a really good week. Okay, so we can post this to Mark, and that badge is now going to be added into Mark's profile. So we can see Mark's got this appreciation now, he's got a badge. And if you go into the user's profile here, as we saw at the start, then what you can also do here is you can see all of your badges inside your profile. Okay, so you can see all of the badges like so. So it's just a really nice way to engage with your employees and show appreciation for staff, especially if you're in multiple different offices. And then the final way here is an announcement. So we're going to now do the same messages we did at the start here, but it goes across to people in a very different way. So let's now post a message again that the office is closed. Okay, the difference with an announcement is you can force the user to mark that they have read that message. So if you've got a critical message like the office is going to be closed, then an announcement is a really good way to ensure the whole team have seen that message. So you can see here the difference between the two. So this was just a normal message that we sent out here, and this is an announcement. Okay, so the announcement, it gets pinned here to the widget on the right hand side, and you can see here the green button where we have to force to mark that the user has read that message. So I can click that now, and now we can see two users have marked that they have acknowledged that message inside the system. So that's a really useful way to ensure your staff have not just seen a message, but they've acknowledged, they've understood that message. Because if there was any questions, they could add that question into that section as well. So an announcement is a really useful way to be able to ensure your staff have not just understood, but that's been acknowledged inside the system as well. So you can see there the differences between a general message that you send out and an announcement in the system. And we would only recommend using announcements as a critical message, because you don't want to really over bombard users with an announcement, because it can start to lose its power. You want an announcement to be for those critical messages for your Bitrix24 engagements. Okay, so that's a look at some of the ways we can engage with our employees in the system. And one last feature to mention here is the company pulse. So the company pulse, this is more for your management side, maybe for your HR managers, but this allows you to actually see who is engaging across the organization inside the Bitrix system. So here we can see, for example, across the different months, how people are engaging with Bitrix. So I can see across October, we were really engaged, but as the months have progressed here, we're starting to engage less and less with certain functionality. Or you might want to look at individuals as well. So over the last year, we can see Max Smith has been the most engaged across the Bitrix system. So quite useful to analyze information. So you can maybe speak with certain teams or departments if they're not engaging with the product as heavily as others. The company pulse can give you that information, so you're able to maybe speak with them. And maybe it could be a training aspect where they need some more training on how to use the system, so they get more engagement through the product. Okay, so let's look at some of the high-level HR tools. So in a second, we're going to check the self-service form. So we'll see how we can manage a new holiday request through the system. And then we'll look at some of the robotic process automation tools as well. So there's quite a few different areas that we'll take a look at. Let's just see if we have any questions. Okay, so yeah, we've answered the question around can an employee be in more than one department? Yes, they can. So you can add a user to as many departments as you like inside the system. But as we mentioned, it's just important to make sure you are accurately adding the user to the relevant departments, because as we've just seen there, when we're posting out a communication, we could send that to a specific department. So very important your users are added to the correct department inside the system. Okay, and can a user clock in on the mobile app? So yes, they can do. You just need to turn on a setting to enable this. So let's just go back into our work time reports area. Okay, and what we want to do is go into that work schedule. And then inside here, if we go into the schedule area, you want to assign a schedule to that employee. So what period do they need to be clocking in for? You can break it down into individual quarters like so. And through here, what we can then do is we can select how we allow a user to clock in and clock out of the system. So if you wanted to allow the user to clock in via the mobile app, then what we could do is we could automatically click in here on the mobile app, and that would then allow the user to use the mobile app to clock in to the system. But if you want to, we do get this question a lot, is people don't want a user to clock in on the mobile app. They want them to clock in on the browser. Again, all you do is tick that off and then save that setting. So it's very easy to customize how a user is able to clock in and clock out of the system. Okay, so that's a few questions answered. If there are any other questions, please do add them into the question box. So what we're going to do now is look at some of the self-service forms that we have on Bitrix. And essentially, self-service form, it allows you to manage a process through the Bitrix24 system. See this is like a workflow, but it's a completely customizable workflow that you can set up. So if we go into the user's profile here, so this is a user Mark. Mark wants to submit to request some annual leave for some holiday. So what we can do here to manage this workflow is we have an annual leave request workflow set up in the system. So a user can request holiday leave in the system. So what we want to do is click on the workflow tool, and then this opens up a selection of workflows that we can select from. Now, again, an administrator can customize what workflows are available here. So there are mandatory out-of-the-box workflows that come with Bitrix. You can also set up your own customized workflows as well. So it's up to you here. But what we can do through here is let's request leave. This then opens up a form that we have to complete before the request then goes to the manager to either approve or reject inside the system. And this form is completely customizable, okay? So you don't need to have just the field that you see here. You can see what we have as mandatory fields in the system. That's completely customizable. You could add more fields into here. You can add more mandatory fields or have fewer. It's up to you here. But let's now select when I want to request the annual leave. So I'm going to add my leave into the system here. And then I can select the duration and the reason. Okay, so I've added that information. And now I'm going to send this out into the workflow designer tool. So that's now processed my request. So I can now see it's gone to my manager and it's waiting either to be approved or rejected in the system. So let's go to the manager's profile. So here we can see that request has come through to the manager and they've also been notified about this request. I can now go to that request and see all of the information about the request. So I can see this user currently has 2 requests that they have submitted in the system. So this one here actually I'm going to reject that request. And this one here that they've just submitted, I'm going to approve that in the system. But what we can do first of all is, before, if you had a lot of requests inside here, you might want to actually just check the business to see if we have the capacity to be able to have that user off inside the system. And this is where the absence chart really comes into play, because what I can see here is then all of the different absences across the business for different time periods. So as the user Mark has requested some time off in July, I can see nobody else is off in July right now. So I'm happy to approve his request in July. So let's now approve that request inside the system. And what will happen now is, if we just go into our absence chart again, we'll see that the holiday request has now, because we've approved it, it's going to be added into the absence chart. So you can see Mark's annual leave request now has been added into the system. And Mark will now be notified about that request being approved as well. So that shows how we can start off a request using a form, and it can then go through a workflow of an approval process. But let's just take a look at how we actually manage that workflow inside the system. So if we go into the workflow designer tool here, then what we can do is we can go into our leave approval. What we can then see inside here are the different types of processes. So here, this is the back end of the what we call the business process designer tool. So this is essentially how the workflow is initiated and run in the back end of the Bitrix24 system. So first of all, the user requested the leave, which we saw. So we inputted the form with the information about the leave. And this then went through an approval process. So we either had to approve or we had to reject that holiday request inside the system. And we approved that second request. So we saw that got added into the absence chart. And that's because once we approved that request and we were marked it as yes, it's been approved, it then got added here into the absence chart. And then the user was notified about that leave. But if the request was rejected, then it would have gone down a different channel. So the user would have been notified that the request was denied, and it would not have gone down here to be added to the absence chart. And using this workflow designer tool, you can completely customize workflows here. So it uses drag and drop technology. So you can really build out your workflows you could have 2 or 3 layers of approvals, for example, on this type of workflow. It's completely customizable to what your workflow process would be. But this is using the business process designer tool. But another way you could manage a workflow is using robotic process automation. So this is quite a newer feature within Bitrix24. And the reason this was set up is because Bitrix found that some customers maybe found the workflow designer tool a bit too complex and a bit intimidating. Well, ourselves as a partner, we could build out your workflows for you on your behalf. So we could build these out for you. But there were some people who were wanting to build their own and found this slightly too over-encompassing and complex. So Bitrix created what we call the robotic process automation. And essentially, the way this works is you create different stages here to manage your HR workflow. So here we can see this is a RPA for managing business trip expenses. So you can see we've got different stages here that we progress the request through. So first of all, we create the expense. Okay, so we can see, again, very similar, there's a form that you need to fill in. And again, that's completely customizable. So you can customize exactly what information needs to go onto that form. Okay, so I can add the information here, select when the trip takes place. And again, if there's other information you want to input, you can select it. And then we can also talk with the CRM system here. So we're pulling in information about the client we're going to visit. So that's now added into our create expense stage. And then you can see as we go through here, there's different stages we progress the request through. And as we go through those different stages, there's different automations here that we can run. And if you know Bitrix, especially the CRM system, you can see this is very, very similar to the Bitrix24 CRM system, especially for leads and deals. And this is where it takes a lot of that functionality from. It's using the stages functionality, and it uses automations to streamline and move those different requests through different stages. So for example, once it's moved to the supervisor stage, the supervisor is notified about the new request, and they can then either approve or decline the expense inside the system like so. So again, it uses different layers of approvals that you can set up. And then through here, again, as you go through those different stages, you might go back to the requester to get more information about the expense. So you could use these automation rules to set up either notifications or changing the stage of the workflow as you need to through the system. So this is a more simplified way of being able to build your HR workflows in the system using the robotic process automation tool. Okay, so that's a look at our HR Toolkit webinar today. So we've seen how we can use the profile and company structure for designing our departments inside the system. And I think as we've seen, using that company structure, it's very important that the company structure is set up correctly, because that is used in a huge number of different areas and modules of Bitrix, especially for engaging with your employees. You can send communications through those different departments. We've seen how we can use time management tools to log our working days or individual task times on the system. And then we've looked at those drive areas where we can store documents and set permissions for who's able to access documents. We've seen a huge number of ways we can engage with employees. And I'd say this is really a key area of the HR features of Bitrix. You're able to use different ways of appreciations, announcements, meetings, and events to engage with your staff through the system. And then we've looked at some of those self-service forms and robotic process automation tools that allows you to build your own HR workflows inside the system. Okay, here's a selection of our up and coming webinars. So we're here every other Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. If you have any questions before the next webinar, contact us please at sales@intreface.com, and one of our team will be happy to discuss your questions with you in detail. And if you want to register for our up and coming webinars, please do go to intreface.com/webinars, and you can register for those webinars that we have coming up in the near future. Okay, but thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found the HR Toolkit webinar useful, and I look forward to seeing you on our up and coming webinars in the future. Bye for now.